Our call to worship this morning was an excerpt from a sermon by the Reverend Bob Shibley, senior minister of this church for 20 years. He was reflecting on his visit with Thich Nhat Hanh, the Zen Buddhist monk and advocate for peace and mindfulness. For several years, I've been starting off each year by reviving a sermon tradition created by Reverend Shibley, paying homage to some notable folks who passed away the previous year, and reflecting on how they might inspire us in our lives. I typically approach this sermon by reviewing lists of those who have passed away and begin grouping them together. There's no way for me to mention all those who have had an impact on our world, and I'm sure I've left out your personal favorite. In fact, I wasn't able to include everyone that I intended to. Themes seem to emerge, such as those who broke a race or gender barrier, those remembered as the best at what they did, or by becoming a part of our lives by sharing their performing or athletic abilities. This year, I was also surprised to see another theme emerge: decisions made by people we might use as a cautionary tale, so to speak. But more about that later. In the past, I've talked about those recently deceased to inspire us to live more fully into our abilities and change our lives for the better. Reverend Shibley's life was changed in his senior year in college, when the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., whom we'll talk more about next week, asked all who could do so to join him in a march for voting rights from Selma to Montgomery. Bob went. It changed his life to see religious institutions witnessing for peace and justice. Dr. King nominated Thich Nhat Hanh for a Nobel Peace Prize after he expressed opposition to the Vietnam War and refused to take sides. Years later, when Reverend Shibley was serving this church, Thich Nhat Hanh named him a Dharma teacher. Such is the interconnectedness of outstanding faith leaders. Thich Nhat Hanh passed away in January of last year at the age of 95. A Vietnamese Tien Buddhist monk, peace activist, prolific author, poet, and teacher, he founded the Plum Village tradition and was recognized as the main inspiration for engaged Buddhism. Known as the father of mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh was a major influence on Western practices of Buddhism. He was one of those people I just sort of thought would be around forever. There are black and white photos of him in his youth when he taught religion at Princeton Seminary, later photos with Martin Luther King Jr., and one with social activist and Trappist monk Thomas Merton. He just seemed to peacefully go on and on. Several other people that I just assumed would plug away forever died this year, including Queen Elizabeth II. Her 70-year-old reign is the longest in the history of the British monarchy. She ascended to the throne in 1952 and served with 15 prime ministers and met 13 of the last 14 U.S. presidents. You may remember our most recent former president keeping her waiting outside Windsor Castle. Queen Elizabeth died on September 8th at the age of 96. Another woman with a very long career and who reached the age of 96 was Dame Angela Lansbury. Her career spanned 8 decades, and she successfully made the transition from playing ingenues to dowagers as effortlessly as she moved from drama to musical comedy. TV viewers will no doubt remember her best as Jessica Fletcher on Murder, She Wrote. She began her film career at the age of 17 in the movie Gaslight and was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. But what has been called her enduring cinematic triumph was in the Cold War thriller The Manchurian Candidate. She played actor Lawrence Harvey's mother, despite being only 3 years older than him, and was again nominated for Best Supporting Actress. I, to no one's surprise, know her best for her work in musicals. I first saw her singing and dancing with Disney cartoon characters in Bedknobs and Broomsticks when I was 11. I spent many an hour singing along with the LP. She was the first Mame on Broadway and the first Mrs. Lovett, and she won 6 Tony Awards. While regrettably I didn't see her in person in Sweeney Todd, I can proudly say I saw her as Madame Armfeldt in A Little Night Music. But many people, especially children, will remember her as the singing teapot in Beauty and the Beast. There were several other people who lent their voices to iconic characters whom we lost this year. While children will know Pat Carroll as the voice of Ursula, the sea witch, in The Little Mermaid, older folks will remember her for appearing with such icons as Sid Caesar, Red Skelton, and Carol Burnett. Pat Carroll was an Emmy, Drama Desk, and Grammy Award winner, as well as a Tony Award nominee. Known for her shrill, grating voice, actress Estelle Harris was not only the voice of Mrs. Potato Head in the Toy Story movies, but was George Costanza's mother on Seinfeld. There are several other voices who were silenced, but these were known for their groundbreaking singing and recording. The career of country music icon Loretta Lynn spanned 6 decades. She was named the Country Music Association's first female vocalist of the year in 1967. In 1972, she became the first woman ever to be CMA Entertainer of the Year. As of 2022, she was the most awarded female country recording artist and only female Academy of Country Music Artist of the Decade. She scored 24 #1 hit singles, 11 #1 albums, and 3 Grammys. Her song, Coal Miner's Daughter, would become the title for the 1980 film made about her life. Marvin Lee Aday, better known by his stage name Meatloaf, appeared as Eddie in another movie musical, the cult classic The Rocky Horror Picture Show. He sold more than 100 million albums worldwide, his most popular being his 1977 debut record, Bat Out of Hell. He won a Grammy Award for his song, I'd Do Anything for Love. We'll always be hopelessly devoted to Olivia Newton-John, who played Sandy in Grease. Her hit song, Physical, cemented her as a superstar in the music video era. Olivia Newton-John was also in a movie set in West Texas, titled Sordid Lives. It became a cult classic for LGBTQ fans, which is just another way of saying it's one of my favorites. Also in the movie is Leslie Jordan, who plays Brother Boy, a drag queen institutionalized by his mother, who, according to his therapist, has a severe case of homosexuality. Instagram fans might know him for his frequent posts during the pandemic. He amassed 5.8 million followers. Fans of Will and Grace will know him as Karen's nemesis, Beverly Leslie, a role which garnered him an Emmy. He appeared on too many TV shows to mention and was, in my humble opinion, one of the funniest people of all time. Leslie Jordan passed away in October. I became familiar with the term GOAT, G-O-A-T, meaning greatest of all time, during the most recent Olympics. There are at least 3 sports figures who died this year who have been called the greatest in their field or sport. Sportscaster Vin Scully is considered by many to be the greatest baseball broadcaster of all time, according to fan rankings, sports website Bleacher Report, and Fox Sports. He called games for the Dodgers beginning in 1950 in Brooklyn and ending in 2016 in LA. That's 67 seasons. Legendary 6'9" basketballer Bill Russell was hailed as the greatest player in the history of the NBA. Russell played with the Boston Celtics in the 1960s and won 11 championships. He garnered accolades as 5-time MVP and was a 12-time All-Star during his career. Brazilian soccer legend Pelé made his World Cup debut in 1958, scoring 3 goals to win against France and scoring 2 more goals to win the final against Sweden. He was only 17 at the time. He led Brazil to additional World Cup wins in 1962 and 1970. Pelé was awarded the International Peace Award in 1978, and the International Olympic Committee named him Athlete of the Century in 1999. I once read, and have recently seen it repeated on social media, that Anne Frank, Dr. King, and Barbara Walters were all born in the same year, 1929. Each notable in their own right. The diarist had her life snuffed out as a teenager. The civil rights pioneer was murdered at the age of 39. And the television journalist passed away on December 30th at the age of 93. Barbara Walters falls into my category of someone who broke a gender barrier, the proverbial glass ceiling. And by the way, the woman who coined the phrase glass ceiling in 1978, Marilyn Loden, died in August. Today, it may be hard to remember that there was a time not that long ago when all news presenters were men. Almost 50 years ago, Barbara Walters was hired as the first female co-host of the Today Show. She became co-anchor of ABC Evening News in 1976, and later co-hosted the TV show 2020. Walters was known for her nimble interview style and hosted the popular annual interview show, Most Fascinating People, for over 20 years. The View, the daytime talk show produced and co-hosted by Walters, premiered in 1997. When she retired from The View on her last episode, Oprah Winfrey introduced 25 female newscasters from across the industry, many of them household names. Newswomen such as Diane Sawyer, Jane Pauley, and Katie Couric came to honor her and acknowledge that because of Barbara Walters, their careers were possible. This leads me to the first takeaway of the morning. Please tell people when they've made a difference in your life. Many members of our congregation are teachers or professors, and I've had several tell me how meaningful it is to get a card or a call from a former student telling them what a positive influence they were. I've had people tell me about a meaningful sermon they heard years ago and still remember. That minister may have moved on, but I suggest that they send them a letter and tell them. What a huge gift. Earlier, I mentioned that I saw another theme emerge this year. Lives as a cautionary tale, so to speak. Now, it's not unusual for me to be flummoxed by postings on social media, not knowing the latest jargon or who nearly any current TV or movie stars or musicians are. I simply smile and keep scrolling. In mid-December, I began seeing postings saying things like, "R.I.P. Twitch." It was several days before I learned that Stephen Boss, who went by the sobriquet Twitch, had been a breathtakingly talented dancer, DJ, and appeared on several TV shows and in movies. He had a wife and daughters, and seemingly had everything going for him. We often forget that we only see the best face on television, the best face of people on television or social media, unless we're watching Jerry Springer. People often keep their problems, especially mental health and substance abuse problems, a secret from even their closest friends. People whom we assume are on top of the world may be suffering trauma or anguish we know nothing about. Twitch took his own life in December at age 40. We see gorgeous, intelligent people with glamorous, high-profile jobs and think they have it made. We can't imagine that they have a worry in the world. Chesley Christ was undeniably gorgeous. She was crowned Miss USA in 2019. She was undeniably intelligent. She had not only a master's in business administration, she had a law degree. She had a high-profile job. She was a correspondent on the TV show Extra. But suffering from what her mother called high-functioning depression, she took her own life a year ago. Iconic country singer Naomi Judd also struggled with mental health issues throughout her life. She and daughter Winona scored 20 top 10 hits, 5 Grammy Awards, and were inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. And she took her own life in April. You may see why I saw an unexpected and impossible to ignore theme in this year's remembrances. Now, I'm not bringing this up to be incredibly depressing on a somewhat rainy Sunday morning. I'm asking us to consider what takeaways we might glean from these lives. I want to suggest 3 things. First, we can't really know what other people are going through, so be kind. Second, to second guess what others went through before they made a devastating decision or how we might have acted differently to help them is futile. Third, if you are suffering, please ask for help. Doing a little research, I discovered some common elements of suicide, which perhaps may give us a bit more understanding. The common stimulus in suicide is intolerable psychological pain, and the common emotion is one of hopelessness and helplessness. Because we can't see why they might be experiencing these is irrelevant. Their common purpose is to seek a solution, and the common action is escape. All this is to say, folks are going through things we may have no way of even imagining. Remember, we are only seeing a happier version of other people's lives, but conversely, we are intimately aware of our own demons and problems, and others are exactly the same way. So please give yourself and others some grace and be supportive of yourself and others. Statistics tell us that 33% of Americans know someone who has died by suicide. That means on a given Sunday, up to 100 people who enter the doors of this church or watch us online knew one of these individuals. And perhaps you are one of these people. Even when a note is written, those left behind are obsessed with asking why and what they could have done differently. Feel free to grieve, to mourn, and to be kind to yourself and others. But please know that they simply weren't able to accept the help you were able to offer at the time due to their suffering. Third, if you are suffering and struggling, please reach out. As I said, I'm not going to pretend to understand what is going through the mind of an individual who is considering suicide as a viable option. But I do know that there are resources. There are options. They are as close as your phone or computer. Please let us help you find them and pursue them. Now, I hope you take to heart what I've just said, but I really don't want to end this whole thing on a downer. So I'm going to tell you about the April Fool's joke that I've played for way too many years. Every April 1st, I replace my Facebook picture with one of my doppelganger, William Hurt. Friends' responses range from, "What a good picture," to, "You look so handsome," to, "Has anyone ever told you you look like William Hurt?" It's true. The next day, I always pretend I have no idea how my photo got replaced by one of the talented and handsome actor William Hurt. One of Hollywood's leading men of the 1980s, William Hurt was nominated for 4 Academy Awards and won the Best Actor Oscar for Kiss of the Spider-Woman. He appeared in more than 50 theater productions and appeared constantly on TV and film. He passed away in March, but that won't stop my practical jokes, despite the fact that now all of you are in on it. Today, I have asked you to pause to consider the lives of those who have gone before. I hope you can see yourself in the best of them, not just in a photo of a look-alike. I hope you are inspired to create more love, more positive change, and more engagement in the world. And remember the words of Thich Nhat Hanh: the more happiness and love that can be reborn, the better, because it will make this world more beautiful and kind. Therefore, you and I should be living our weeks, our days, and our hours in order to be reborn constantly as happiness, love, and kindness. Amen.